embrace innovative volunteerism.
The challenges we're facing in the world today, no matter where you are, fuel, food, and financial crises are real. As a result of the Russian-Ukrainian war, this reality is being felt by many across the world, and also in the African continent. When we come back, we'll discuss more. Stay tuned.
Innovative and volunteerism, food security and youth unemployment, climate actions and selfless solutions. These are things that we need to engage for. When I lift up my eyes, I see people still living in affliction. Mothers and children go to bed.
It is about 7 months today, and 2 years after the start of COVID-19, plunging millions of people into suffering. People are still feeling the heat today of the COVID-19 pandemic impact. Yet, there is another. The Russian-Ukrainian war has plunged millions into suffering, especially suffering food crisis. The price of bread has gone up. The price of fuel has gone up, putting pain not only on people's table, but also on people's pocket. And as a result of this, in the African continent today, inflation has risen to about 12.2%. And this is having implications because governments are struggling not only to curtail inflation, but actually looking at means to reduce food prices and to reduce fuel prices. All this having potential to plunge populations into chaos. But the bigger question we have to answer today is, what solutions do exist in place? And I've got short-term and long-term solutions that I will prescribe today, based on the evidence and the knowledge that has been obtained from the work we do, and also from experiences that exist elsewhere in the world. When it comes to short-term, what government needs to do is to subsidize actually essential food like wheat, like corn, maize, and these food products. Actually, the subsidization is just for short-term. But when you want to look at fuel, there needs to also be subsidies. But there needs to be tax breaks, especially for those who are engaged in the informal sector, because 90% of employment happens in the informal sector. Tax waivers for these enterprises in the informal sector will help to caution them against these shocks. Yes, of course, there is increase in interest rates by government, so that at least the cost of borrowing can become higher, and then that will reduce the ability of people to shoot up prices. But when it comes to the long term, which is the most important today, what do we need to do? We need to start looking, especially the entire African continent today, with over 50% of wheat in the continent imported, that is costing the continent over 19 billion US dollars each and every year. This sends a signal that Africa must look internally and start to add value to food that's produced internally. And here, one crop, a climate resilient crop, comes to mind: cassava. Cassava is Africa's climate resilient crop. Cassava is Africa's goal. Cassava is a crop that can be able to produce 300 products. This crop, long forgotten, is Africa's goal that needs to be looked into detailing now and made to become the norm when it comes to food security in the continent. Value added to it can produce cassava bread. Value added to it can produce cassava cakes. Value added to it can produce different products that can create employment for the youth and at the same time help enhance food secured homes across the entire African continent. Another aspect that has to be looked internally is, if you look at the African continent today, over 900,000 Africans out of a population of 1.4 billion depend on unclean cooking. They're depending on charcoal. They're depending on kerosene. They're depending on liquid petroleum gas. But the unfortunate thing is that the liquid petroleum gas is only consumed by 5% of Africans. What does this tell you? It means that 95% of Africans still depend on charcoal. And this charcoal is not only, the price has gone up, because the price of liquid petroleum and kerosene has gone up. People now are defaulting back to charcoal. And the charcoal vendors have also increased the price. That means people's pockets are still continuously depreciated. What then is the alternative? Incentives to turn agricultural waste into fuel briquettes that replaces charcoal, that is even 2 times more effective than charcoal, is the best way to go. This way, you'll be creating jobs for young people. This way, you'll be helping replace charcoal, which has a market value across the continent of 20 billion US dollars, and that market can be unleashed and tapped into by these clean solutions. Also, investing in helping turn waste into biogas to replace liquid petroleum gas is an opportunity to create jobs for the young people and help move towards a low emission development pathway, and at the same time meet your climate change commitments. That's the best thing to do. But as we're speaking today, this narrative of leveraging on climate action and environmental solutions to cushion the shocks seems to be at the peripheries. And that's why I'm bringing this today. Climate opportunity can be seized to be able to address the fuel food crisis in the continent. And this can be done leveraging this aspect that I've mentioned, because the emergencies will continue to come, from COVID emergency to food emergency to energy emergency. We must be able to caution and diversify, because diversification is the biggest security of a system. But to do that, you cannot forget your people, the young people whose skills are needed to be able to turn these challenges into opportunity. And leveraging the environmental lens is the best way that we can use to caution against food and energy prices. Thank you.